You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, missing money, a meddling neighbor, a curious cop, and another vanished husband. Are the Garveys up to it again? We'll discuss season 2 of Apple TV's Bad Sisters. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca, and proud owner of hot pink ski pants that just arrived.
Oh, congratulations. The whole world is as happy for you and rooting for you.
I'm happy for me.
I'm happy for you, too.
The world is rooting for you.
I need a jacket.
We hope you can pull it off. Hope you can pull it off.
We're rooting for her to be a successful skier in her hot pink pants. I need a new ski jacket, so if you know where I should get one, tell me. And finally, our captain of all things cynical, author of a City Trilogy, host of Rip Current, Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin, this is Monday's program.
It is.
What's happening on Thursday's show?
On Thursday, we're talking about the new podcast from Serial Productions and the New York Times. It's called The Good Whale.
Okay. I have something that I just want to mention, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
Your random knowledge came you have this random compendium of encyclopedic knowledge about very specific things. Came in very handy in a weird way yesterday.
All right.
So, Laura and Toby, one of our favorite listeners, Sue Hall, no offense, other listeners, but you'll find out why she's one of our favorites in a second, sent us gifts. And she sent them all to our house, and she wrote a note saying that she was sending us things that were quintessentially Canadian.
Nice.
And I opened my gift, and it was a really cool long sleeve race t-shirt, and it featured Terry Fox, apparently Canada's national hero. So I made Teddy, my son, look. I was like, "You trying to find out who Terry Fox is?" And so he told me this whole inspiring story about Terry Fox. And then Kevin came home from being out, saw the t-shirt, and then regaled me with an entire encyclopedic knowledge of Canadian hero Terry Fox.
Could you start? Do you guys know who Terry Fox was?
He's the guy who ran across Canada, right? Because he had cancer or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
And then he died. So Kevin has this knowledge for a very specific reason. What is that reason, Kevin?
Because I remember the HBO movie from the 1980s about Terry Fox and the Terry Fox story. And it's right. He had cancer and he had his leg amputated. And so his goal was to run from ocean to ocean, start at the Pacific. And then on his prosthetic leg, he was going to jog across Canada. And so I remembered that. And then I remembered that
all these details you remembered.
Yeah. I knew he didn't make it only because the tagline in the promo was something like, "Did he make it? You decide." It's okay, well, I'm guessing that he didn't actually make it, but
likely.
And that
Did he die?
Well, his cancer, came back and he wasn't able to complete it. But I do remember the scene he got as far as Quebec, and he was jogging along the side of the road, and some Quebecois pulls over and opens the door because he thinks he's hitchhiking. He sees a guy with
one leg.
Prosthetic leg. He's trying to get in, and he's he's yelling at him in French to get in. And he's like, "I'm Terry Fox. I am jogging across Canada," and he didn't know what the thing was. And so I just remember weird little details. But I was like, "Oh yeah, Terry Fox," and apparently I blew Rebecca's mind.
You did.
Wow.
It was incredible. But it wasn't. It was not even so much that you knew who Terry Fox was. Mm-hmm. It was your memory, your incredible, ice, crystal clear memory of this HBO movie from the 80s.
Yeah, I think...
Who was in it? Who starred as Terry Fox?
A Canadian actor who had a prosthetic leg. I do not know who that was.
That narrows it down quite a bit.
It should narrow it down, but I don't remember.
Wow.
I don't remember those details.
And could run.
And could run,
yes.
Yeah. And I remember the scene where he discovered that there's something wrong with his leg, and the doctor told him, and it was very dramatic. But I think maybe Rebecca was impressed because I did have 2 beers before explaining this.
You were so
I was a
loud.
little more animated.
So loud.
Yeah. there might have been some pantomime involved in this.
So when this was like early 80s or late 70s?
Like mid 80s. The movie itself, or like when
The movie.
No, when he actually
yes, he
did
wants to
it.
know when the movie came out.
I don't remember dates.
I
but
feel like I remember like seeing it on the news, where it's like, Terry Fox is in Manitoba or something.
Yeah, that's right. So Canadian listeners, I see you.
You do. He sees you through the lens of HBO
television movies. Not the prestige television ones either.
It's okay. Everything I know about the founding fathers I learned from John Adams on HBO, so don't worry about it. Okay. Well, should we talk about the thing we're going to be talking about this podcast?
Let's talk about it.
Let's go ahead and drop that first clip right now. Leading off.
Right, to be.
You don't have to worry about it.
No, I want it. Just promise me.
There won't be any strippers or dwarves.
Oh, you can't say dwarves, love.
Oh, sorry.
There'll be no little people taking off any clothes.
That's not true. Put it away, Becca.
The Garvey sisters gather to celebrate Grace's wedding to Ian, a man far more loving than her dead first husband, John Paul. But Roger is struggling with his guilt of helping Grace get rid of the prick and making it look like an accident.
I'm thinking of going to the police. I need to unburden myself.
What? Why would you do that?
It's just a matter of time. I've read about these things. It's better to come clean now. I'll tell him what he did. I'll say about his son.
Roger, you're scaring me.
You can unburden yourself too,
No.
After an unexpected turn, Eva and her sisters struggle with a pushy neighbor, an unexplained absence, and a possible blackmail scheme. As the Garveys dig themselves deeper into a hole, the Garda re-examine John Paul's untimely death and the sisters' connection to it.
A woman died. And now a woman is missing. Wherever Ian Riley is, those Garvey sisters aren't far behind. I think we should arrest him before he runs.
No, we are absolutely not doing that, and you know we can't do that.
The second season of the Emmy-nominated Bad Sisters from Apple TV Plus finds Eva, Bibi, Becca, and Ursula trying to cover up more crimes and confront their own family turmoil. The dark comedy explores how far people will go to protect the ones they love. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about plot points from Bad Sisters. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. So, Kevin, they killed off Grace, the bad sister.
That's right. We already go for the spoilers, right?
Yeah, just let's talk about it. I don't want people to at me, but my very strong feeling when they killed off Grace was relief.
Because she was the
worst sister.
The worst of the five sisters.
She was infuriating to watch. I'm sure the actress is lovely as a human being, but I fucking hated that character. And everyone was like, she's the best of us. I'm like, no.
Well, she was the most passive of the characters. Again, we're going to talk about season 1 because she needed to be, she needed to not be like a real suspect among the sisters about who might have killed John Paul if it was murder. And, you also have to be believable that she wouldn't stand up to him or whatever.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that in 2022, season 1 of Bad Sisters was in everybody's top 4.
Wow.
And it was Toby's number 2 pick for the year.
It was my number 2. I thought it was my number 1, but yeah, maybe it was my number 2.
Yeah. This season, though, I think that I can speak for all of us. This season was a big disappointment to me because I don't feel like it had any of, and we'll get back to Grace. I'm sorry, Rebecca. But,
it's okay. I got my feelings out.
Oh, you got your feelings out. Okay. Well, I'm sure everybody has feelings, but my take on this is that this did not have any of the charm of season 1. Because season 1, the dual timelines made the story so enjoyable, so it's like, well, how did John Paul die? We get to find out why each sister might want him dead, and are the low stakes of the insurance agents going to go through with it, and all the different ways that they fail, and it's funny and everything like that, and with the only narrative mystery here being well, who's in the trunk?
I've changed my mind. I'm not ready to open it. No, for what happens after. Nothing's gonna happen. Okay, we have it covered. Are we sure? Of course we're sure.
Everything else plays out chronologically, and there's not a lot of suspense or surprise in it, for me.
Laura, you seem to agree with that assessment.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I feel like the first season was there was the Irish part of it that was fun. Irish sisters, they had this great camaraderie. They still have the great camaraderie, but the humor felt more darkly funny and relatable in the first season. Like you said, there was an actual murder mystery in the first season. In this season, it was kind of predictable. I'm like, okay, when somebody seems too good to be true, they probably are. And then at one point I was like, okay, Bad Sisters bingo. How long before Eva or Eve, whatever, has sex with the dead sister's husband? Oh, wait, now they're doing it. Okay. So I think they tried to give the sisters all sort of their own little subplot this season. You know, you have like the one sister is like going through menopause. The other one, they're trying to have a kid. Now the one that was so like wild in the first season has like the handsome boyfriend. You've got the other sister who's like diverting drugs at work. And I think that was like an attempt to try to make us relate more to the characters this season. But overall, it kind of fell flat for me compared to season 1.
Toby, you have a similar note. You says falls well short. Why do you think it is that this season didn't deliver quite the same punch?
So I've got a lot of notes about how I think the writing was really bad for this, or the plotting was really bad for this season. But since Laura, I'll just echo what Laura says about these little subplots that may be trying to humanize each one of the sisters, is that none of them go anywhere. Like, there's literally no consequence to any of that stuff. Like, Ursula doesn't get busted for diverting drugs, you know, all the stuff with the kids kind of works out fine. It's all just kind of these non-issues. And I've got a lot of issues with the writing, but I do think it says it's based on some Belgian show. Mm-hmm. And I sort of feel like the first season, which was probably closely based on that Belgian show, was so popular they had to do a second season. And then they were like, what are we going to do? And they came up with this nonsense, which I feel like it's sort of like this typical sort of second season thing, which is, and I think this happened with True Detective too, which is like what made the first season good. And then you're kind of losing what was strong about the first season. So you end up leaning into these other aspects of it. And then you kind of realize in reflection that what carried the first season was not necessarily the relationship of the women or whatever. It was strong plotting, interesting characters, stuff like that, which get kind of neglected here, I think.
I do think that a lot of the magic of the show as it is the actresses and the female actors, as they now say in award season, being in scenes together. Like, my favorite scene in this season was the sauna scene.
Becca, can you please just calm down? How can I calm down? I'm in a sauna. My blood is literally boiling.
It just made me realize what I was missing, which was the location stuff where you're like, what the fuck are they doing in Ireland in the freezing cold, diving into water? And now they're all in their bathing suits and it's like 10 below and they just hop into that sauna situation. And that's like interesting in addition to being good seeing these actors together. The other thing that I will say I liked about this season was Fiona Shaw playing Angelica.
We're the same, you and I.
Are we? Oh, in what way?
We're women of a certain age who understand we can't have it all. But we're happy with that. We're content with our lot.
That twist there, where you believe she is the villain the entire season, and then it turns out she's the opposite of the villain, and she ends up having been right. I actually went back because I was curious to know whether or not they cheated. And honestly, if you know that she's right when you watch the early episodes, the actor is acting that way. Like, they don't cheat. Like, all of the clues are there, actually, that she knows the truth and that she's protecting the girl. But, like, it's so sister-centric that we've learned to see things through their lens, too.
You mean that Angelica was protecting...
Blonde.
Blonde. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Remember she set up that creepy bedroom for her in her house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously Fiona Shaw is good in this. She was excellent in the Killing Eve series and the other things that we've seen her in.
The latest season of True Detective.
Right, yeah, I forgot about that.
She was the ghost lady.
But I just don't feel like I ever really got her motivation. Right? I mean, so you went back a second time to kind of figure out Angelica.
I just watched an early episode just to make sure that they didn't cheat.
Okay. And I think this is like indicative of all the characters. It was kind of like, what is their reason for being? I mean, she's a wagon, and it just made me want to look up, well, what does it mean to call somebody a wagon in Ireland? And it's an obnoxious, brash woman. So, okay, fine. Plus, apparently Angelica spent 3 hours floating in the Irish Sea and is fine. I mean, didn't anybody see Titanic?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Oh, that's right.
The water's pretty cold.
Didn't see Titanic. Right?
Yeah, the North Atlantic is quite cold. So to be clear, Kevin, I thought Angelica's motives at the end were revealed very clearly, which is that she actually was very close with Grace, cared about her a lot, and then was protecting her daughter from Ian, or that was the plan, was to protect her daughter from Ian. And also she and Blonded were very close too, but it came across as stalking for much of the series. So
she created an entirely like new bedroom in her own house for Blonded.
Because she wanted her to be comfortable and have a place to stay when she came over.
Out of like this season, like that character of Angelica was like one of the more redeeming things of this particular season, because I loved her in Killing Eve. And she just played this character so well, especially like when she like got knocked overboard and then came back and like she's like on death's door. And it was just, her character really made this season.
So Toby, you actually have a different interpretation of Angelica than I do.
Well, I can kind of see that she was generally friends and trying to help Blonded or whatever. Quite honestly, if somebody had a person who I didn't necessarily know that well made a bedroom for one of my kids in their house, I'd be pretty fucking freaked out.
Yeah.
But besides that, I felt like this was the turning point for me. And when I went from like kind of having patience with this season to kind of losing it completely is when she gets knocked overboard and then comes back and she's sort of this childlike, friendly person. And whatever her motivations were or whatever, she was putting the surviving sisters in very, very difficult positions because she's a busybody and she knew everybody's business, and she was putting pressure on them for whatever reason. And that seemed like the most interesting part of the whole thing was like, how are they going to extricate themselves from her sort of persistent being in their business and learning too much and things that are going to put them in jeopardy? The way this and a bunch of other things end up working out for them is they kind of luck out, and that she gets knocked overboard, and then her personality completely changes when she comes back. You know, she's like, oh, can I bring you some tea? I mean, she becomes this very sort of meek, like trying to be friends, like unsure what she's doing, when she's the exact opposite of it up until then. So the idea, I guess, is that she's got some kind of brain damage and she now has changed her personality or whatever.
No, anyway, Toby, it's a symbolic baptism. She's been reborn after being in the water.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So it's like so much stuff in this. The resolutions are so just sort of like, and then it all kind of worked out, you know, and then something happened and it worked out for them.
Yeah.
There's very little agency on the part of the actual sisters in resolving their issues.
Yeah.
Like they basically kind of survive and then other people do things, or they just get crazily lucky and then things kind of work out for them.
Yep.
Because nothing they do actually solves any of their problems as far as I could tell. Maybe they're like little things, but in the big things, it all got taken care of for them and they kind of floated.
So, Kevin, we do have two cops in this season, and they're sort of like the mirror image to the Claflin brothers, where we have like two people trying to work against the sisters in some way, especially one of them. So, what do you make of Muldoon and Houlihan, these two cops?
Yeah, I'm not sure what I make of them. Like, you know, because the Claflin brothers, obviously you're rooting for the sisters, but you don't want to necessarily root against these guys. Like, you just want them not to figure it out, because they both were kind of likable and there was a little romance there. And then there's like this conflict between the two of those cops.
You tampered with evidence.
Detective, drop it.
I'm going to report this.
I wouldn't if I was you.
You threatening me?
I'm offering you some advice, detective. And speak to me like that again and you'll find yourself back in the South Circular handing out speeding tickets for your troubles.
You know, eventually we see that Muldoon, who we're not having a good feeling about, we think is the one who's going to really figure it out, and he's actually not. But he sort of like breaks bad when he finds Grace's money. I don't know why he would figure out that he'd find it in the turtle bin or whatever, but he finds the money and he takes the money for himself. Now, you don't need to steal money to join us on Patreon.
No, you don't.
What you have in your wallet is probably sufficient.
That's right.
Because
this is the business section, folks.
It's a great value. If you join us at patreon.com/partners in crime media, you'll get over 700 exclusive podcasts.
Better value than Costco.
Way better than Costco.
Buying a 70-gallon jar of pickles at Costco.
That does sound appealing, but...
What?
Yeah, I don't know either, Toby. We're just going to...
Toby's never seen Titanic, and he's never been to a Costco.
Yeah.
I guarantee
I've been to a Costco. I didn't see the 70 gallons of pickles, though.
Right. Hey, Laura and Toby, just come over here to the other side of the studio where Rebecca can't hear. Guys, I don't know what Rebecca's all about, but she just seems to be like really not herself. So if she wants to do the thing about pickles, we'll just let her do it, okay?
It's all
Maybe
good.
she's pregnant.
Oh, shit. Okay. Don't bring it up. All right, come back to the show. All right.
Rebecca's not looking that amused by that suggestion.
So, what can you do? Are you like Bono's daughter there, or are you just like
stink-eyeing my way through life?
Yeah, and you're pregnant too, and no one's supposed to know, except maybe, I don't know, who's the father?
Let me put it this way. If I found out if I were pregnant today, I would Fiona Shaw myself off of a sailboat.
Wow.
Yeah, after you got hit with the
At
boom.
51 years old, no thank you.
All right. Well, what was I talking about? Oh, yes, Patreon.
Yes.
You can join us for as little as $5 a month. You'll get all sorts of exclusive podcasts like the Crime Writers on After Show.
Yes.
Big treat for us this after show, guys.
What is it?
I don't know if Laura and Rebecca know this, but Toby's friend experimented with AI-created podcasts.
Uh-huh.
What he did was he gave Google Notebook, I think is the software program, right? It plugged in Toby's LinkedIn page.
Oh.
And it created a 13-minute podcast with two voices that are completely fake talking about Toby.
Amazing.
So we're going to listen to it and comment.
All right.
And all my accomplishments.
All your accomplishments.
I can't wait.
It's fucking crazy. It's crazy.
LinkedIn,
It's crazy what this does.
LinkedIn is crazy.
And they call it the Deep Dive. They call their fake podcast the Deep Dive. And I don't know if that's just coincidental, but we have a much better Deep Dive. It's Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast.
Uh-huh.
And you can listen to Toby and his friends talk about some great literature. It's the best book club that you will subscribe to. You can also get our Married with podcast where Rebecca and I dole out information. And you can get Rebecca's updates in the Karen Reed case and the Readathon, and you have some new stuff.
Yeah, latest updates, including the resignation of the U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts, Josh Levy, what that could mean for the case, and including a wild hearing that involved dog bites.
Okay. You also can join us at the Bricker scale level, where you get another exclusive podcast. It is Leave It to Bricker, and Laura's latest adventures include her going to a cat show. And by cat show, it's like a dog show where there were judges and everything like that, but it was for cats.
It was for cats, and apparently cat sperm is a hot commodity. This is why we go to cat
It's
shows.
a hot commodity.
It's a hot commodity.
Yeah, it's one I don't want to know anything else about.
Those cats are hot. Those cats are buck wild.
Hey, anything from inside a cat is going to be hot when it comes out. And lastly, you can, why don't you think about joining us at the Let's Do What We Do level, where you get episodes of Crime Writers on early and ad-free. Look, you can try out Patreon for free for 7 days. And you can listen to all sorts of great stuff. See if you like it. It's okay. We'll let you try it. If you don't, care for us, well, maybe we'll get you next time.
All right. Kevin, does thus end our business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out and give everyone some relief. So, Kevin, this show left you cold?
Yeah, but the winter clothes at Quince will never leave you cold.
Nice.
Did you not get what you wanted for Christmas?
I got
No,
a
I'm
lot
not
of
asking
it.
you.
Oh.
I'm not asking you. I'm talking to the listener.
Oh, okay.
Did you not get what you wanted for Christmas?
They didn't.
Nor did you not get what you wanted for your December birthday, where everybody just gives you a gift and says this is for both? What a ripoff, right?
Lame.
Super lame. All right, well,
Here's one shoe for your birthday, another shoe for Christmas.
I like how that works, yeah. One glove, yeah. Treat yourself to a little something without spending a fortune with Quince. So all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands because they partner directly with top factories and cut out the middleman.
Oh, yeah.
Passing the savings on to you. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. Rebecca, I know that you are the unofficial ambassador of Quince to the world.
And I did some Christmas shopping there. Want to hear what I got?
Yeah, tell us.
You saw. I gave your daughter an incredible faux fur jacket. I have the same one, a white, super fuzzy one. It's amazing. And I gave one of our kids a cashmere fisherman sweater from Quince. It's so beautiful.
That will definitely keep them warm. So treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/crime for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime.
So, Laura, you also have a note about Houlihan, the detective, Una Houlihan. What were your thoughts about these cops?
Well, I couldn't really figure out this detective. They were overplaying the bumbling, socially awkward angle so much that I was like, am I supposed to root for this person? I mean, I think she was playing it really well, but even like in the beginning when she shows up and like her clothes don't fit and she just looks like this is like the person that has never had any social outlet type situation. And now she's with this older seasoned detective. I was so distracted by the mannerisms of the character throughout, but I was just like, do I invest in this person or not? And then when at the end, she actually starts taking initiative, I'm like, well, the way they've been playing this so down this entire series, like, I don't know if I'm going to buy into the fact that she's actually going to do something. Like, it was hard to root for her, even though I kind of was like, I feel like I should be rooting for her. It felt like they had made a caricature of a bumbling detective and just taken it 3 steps too far to the point that you couldn't relate to it at all. Yeah. And I don't know if anyone else had that reaction, but I was just like, I can't relate to this character.
What I saw was a naive cop thinking that she was playing one game while the other cops are playing a different game. And I liked the performance, but didn't really get what we were supposed to get out of it until the end. What did you think, Toby?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the performance kind of made it. I think the character itself is sort of a stock character, you know, the young, naive, socially awkward person coming into a new job and just like not picking up on the cues around them. I thought the actor who played Houlihan just did a pretty good job of sort of showing the sort of nerdy bulldog attitude, especially towards the end. One of the themes that kind of runs through this, I think, is kind of how men make everything a lot harder. And so that was kind of her experience, was she would have these insights or ideas, and her partner / supposed to be mentor, who she respected, would kind of shoot him down, and then they wouldn't go forward anywhere until he finally retires and she gets a little more agency. But again, I mean, I kind of felt like this is yet another example of the sisters are all, in the end, completely dependent upon her protecting them without them even knowing, right? So she ends up going through a few machinations to make sure that Ian can't point the finger at them without sort of burning himself. And there's no indication that the sisters know about it. There's nothing that they did to make it happen. She just sort of decides that this is her idea of what justice is, and is willing to go forward with it.
And she needs to bring in a man to help her do it.
Right. But he's not doing it willingly, right? Like, they have to show that he's like, all right, are we even now? Like, I didn't want to do this. You kind of forced me to do it. So it's not even like he's doing it out of any sense of morality or whatever. It's because he just wants to make his life easier. So, yeah, I mean, I thought, again, good performance, you know, sort of indifferently written.
Kevin, I mentioned it at the very, very top of the show. They killed off Grace in episode 2 of this season. That was a bold choice, even though I think it was the right choice characters-wise, because I found her infuriating, like I said. But what did you think about that?
Why not just make her a better character?
That's another. You know? That's another option.
Yeah, I mean, Absolutely. She just got married, and like that could be a turning point and whatever. But it completely upended the tone of the show. I mean, even if you like, okay, it's the second season, and like, what are you going to do to keep, you know? How do these spunky girls get in trouble again? And
women, Kevin, women.
They're plucky sisters, plucky Irish sisters. And how are they gonna, you know?
Any other stereotypes you want to throw in? Brash, plucky.
They're all wagons. No. Like, I mean, even if they decided like Grace is going to kill off another husband, then okay, there's, I think, a chance to work with that in a way that is true to the tone of the original show. And this like really makes all their interactions about grief, right? As opposed to comical panic about how do we cover this up. And so if the crime mystery thing that everybody's concerned about in the first one is how did you kill off this very odious person, you don't know who did it or how, with this back and forth timeline. Instead, it's built around a tragic accident where a character, some would say a beloved character, not Rebecca, that's fine.
The sisters loved her.
We'll move on. Yeah, the people that
We're
you care
told
about.
She was beloved.
Yeah, and a lot of it is them working through their grief about something that really isn't a crime per se, right? So it ends up being tonally a different show. And the fact that there's like no good jokes in it doesn't help.
So, Laura, for a minute there, we think that Ursula may have contributed to her death by giving her drugs that she took that caused her to drive poorly. That turns out not to be a non-issue. It really, truly was just an accident that didn't really have any
suspense.
And how do you feel about the aftermath of that? How was that handled for you?
Well, I think that was the other part about this is like, we're supposed to connect to the fact that these are sisters. They're very close sisters. And Grace dies. And it feels like they all just sort of rebound kind of quickly. It didn't feel like there was like a prolonged period of mourning. But again, we don't know like the time frame. Were they like months after this where we're seeing things play out? It just kind of felt like they were back up and at their regular life pretty soon after. And I mean, to the point that obviously the one sister goes and has sex with the husband. And I'm like, it didn't ring true given the dynamic that we are to believe about the relationship between these sisters. Like it just felt like, okay, moving on. But they were concerned about her daughter. I mean, and the other thing is, like you were saying, Kevin, in the lack of a mystery and the dual timelines in the first season, I think one of the things about the first season is that you hate John Paul. Like I was like, I want him to die. I didn't have that same sort of visceral feeling about Ian until like the second to last episode. And it felt like, okay, now we have to make them be like on the same page of like, we're going to kill this guy and he's bad. But I think what worked about it was that we all had that commonality of like, this guy is a prick. Like, good thing somebody killed him, you know?
Except he doesn't die. And that actually, I felt like was so spoiled. His non-death was so spoiled by the fact that we had a previous non-death in the show.
Right.
It was like this again. Somebody, you think they're dead, you put them in a trunk and surprise, they're not dead. Like it was really had all the, I mean, granted, I think that that's a dumb soap opera construct anyway. It happens literally all the time on General Hospital. But it does. A guy got put in the freezer and then miraculously came back. But like any potential error could have had deflated by the fact that the same thing had happened with Angelica, that she died and then came back. It was just like very disappointing. Toby, what about the secondary characters here? Because we are introduced to Blonde. We're introduced to, Bibi's partner.
Reintroduced to those.
Reintroduced, and Becca's new boyfriend. What are your thoughts about the way that these secondary characters, because they have a lot of screen time compared to, just being cameos. Did that work?
Can you mention anything about any one of their personalities?
Blonde
plays hurling.
Yes.
And other Gaelic sports.
And she got aggressive that one time on the field.
Yeah. I mean, it's Blonde is basically there to be like a figure of guilt, I think, for Eva, like sort of whether Blonnet's like happy with her or not happy with her or whatever. It just kind of gives Eva something to worry about. They're not just poorly written. They're just not written. They're just people who happen to play a role that needs to be played. I mean, one of the things is that there's this whole thing about kids where Becca is pregnant, and then there's like, does Bibi want to have a kid? And I think Angelica dropped something about how Bibi didn't really bond with her partner's kid, who already had a kid when they got together. It's
called the stepson.
The stepson. There we go. I knew there was a word for it somewhere. It comes to nothing,
Yeah.
It just really, it doesn't even, I like why they included it. I don't know. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else that happens. There's no actual sort of emotional charge to anything. It's just like, oh, well, I'm not sure if I want to have a kid. Oh, well, actually now I do want a kid.
Yes. Very disappointing, by the way, because, and I'm just going to say it, abortions are never followed through with on television or movies. And it's like, it happens all the time. It's a very common experience, right? She says she's going to have an abortion over and over and over and over again. And then something happens to potentially endanger the life of her fetus. And suddenly she is the most maternal person in the world. That is such a fucking cop-out, writing-wise, in my opinion.
Well, though, I feel as though it's just one of about 45 cop-outs in this entire season, which is just one enormous cop-out. I guess they exist because they want people to know that these characters have a life outside hanging out in Eva's kitchen and doing group hugs, but none of it really impacts the plot in the slightest. Mm-hmm. Like, there's never any competing for demands. I mean, I think maybe once, like, it's like, should I go to Blonnet's hurling or should I like break into somebody's house? I think that might have been the one time when like family gets in the way of doing other stuff. It's just poorly written, and I don't understand why, because they must have had a huge budget where they could have gotten some writers and sat down and come up with something that was more. And you could even work with some of the plot points that are there and just make them a little more suspenseful. Put a little bit more, like you could just, for instance, just off the very top of my head, like if Ursula was actually being suspected for diverting pills and there was a chance that the one who dies had it in her system, like that actually has like some consequence other than just guilt,
right?
Guilty mind, you know? I mean, it just, I don't know. It just felt bad.
So Kevin, Sharon Horgan is famously the creator of this show, does a lot of the writing, and is a very like pleasant appearance on screen. Like I always like seeing her in things, right? Do you think that this season of Bad Sisters employs the potential of Sharon Horgan?
No, I mean, she's almost lost in this. Like her first season arc contained like this romance and her beef with John Paul, and she was basically the band leader in this conspiracy, you know, about murdering the prick. And you know, this season, I mean, primarily, what is she doing? Jogging her way through menopause. I mean, what?
Yeah.
I mean, what was like?
As one does.
As one does. I mean,
it doesn't help with menopause. You're supposed to lift weights. Don't you know anything, people?
Yeah, and then like there's this attraction with Ian, but I just felt like she was invisible to me, like as a character, that it just didn't. I don't know what it was. Like nothing clicked the way it did in the first season, and you know, like her acting isn't bad, but. You know, I mean, some of the blame's going to fall on her as a producer, writer, or whatever for really not delivering the goods this season.
Was there any of the sisters that you were like, wow, what a great season for this sister? They really stole the scene.
Nope.
None of them.
Nope.
No.
There's not one of them who is even as good as they were in the first season. There's not even like a flat line. They're all worse.
No. Roger's better, but.
Roger?
I mean, slightly, yeah.
He's pathetic.
But he's pathetic in like a lovely way, isn't he?
No.
I was like, why would anybody want to hang out with this guy?
Agreed.
This guy is just like a drip.
He's a sap. Okay, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out season 2 of Bad Sisters? Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down for Bad Sisters?
I am mild thumbs down. I think one of the issues here is that season 1 could have been a standalone series. Like when season 1 ended, everything was kind of resolved, but we really liked these characters. So they brought it back for season 2. And I feel like season 2 didn't have the same anything as season 1 in a way that actually made me want to watch it. And I felt like the mystery was lacking in season 2. There was a cast shakeup in this season. And I feel like that could have been more of a mystery. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And so it just didn't connect the same way. I think for me, the reason I'm not like a solid thumbs down is I like the introduction of Fiona Shaw into this season. I liked her character, Angelica. I love Fiona Shaw in Killing Eve and Harry Potter and other things that she's been in. She was a fun character for me. We had some police characters that, while I couldn't quite figure them out, were new, kind of interesting to me. But overall, I felt like this season didn't need to happen because there was no lingering question for me at the end of the first season that would have compelled me to be like, I can't wait for the second season to see how that's going to resolve. So it felt like everything was sort of orchestrated simply for the fact of having a second season without necessarily thinking through what story and plot would actually have been more compelling for the second season.
Toby Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Bad Sisters season 2?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. Like, was there a need for a second season? Which, you know, in retrospect, there isn't. And they could have used that money and made another season of Mindhunter. And I think everybody would have been a lot happier.
Yes. Amen. Different network, though, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's just money.
Yeah.
It's just money. It costs the same
just
everywhere.
General money.
Yeah, just throw it around. Yeah, so I'm a thumbs down. You know, I was thinking thumbs sideways when we started talking about it, but I think a lot of that is because after the first 2 episodes, I was like, oh, this seems like it's got promise. And that kind of stuck in my mind. But then the more I thought about it and talked through it during the actual review, it's so poorly plotted. It's poorly written. It's just for something that clearly had a big budget and must have been able to pay as many and get as many good writers as they wanted to. there's not suspense. There's not cleverness. The main characters don't actually seem to have any agency. Stuff just kind of happens to them. And that's just poor writing. So anyway, the main actors are all pleasant and, you know, it's not objectionable. And there are parts of it that are kind of fun to watch. But man, you know, if somebody had never seen Bad Sisters, I'd say watch the first season and then don't watch the second season and you'll come away with this, like, wasn't that awesome feeling? Because once you watch the second season, it's like, you know, it's just a very, very uneven series at that point. So anyway, it's a very reluctant but solid thumbs down.
Kevin Flynn.
I'm also a thumbs down. I felt like, you know, what made the first season great was its clever storytelling and the structure of the story. And it just went like in a straight chronological order here. The mystery in and of itself is not really compelling as a crime. And as far as like the characters, they don't have the same chemistry. This doesn't have the same kind of charm. Just, you know, seeing these characters back on screen a second time is not good enough to do something. And season 1 was all in our top 4s for 2022. This, you know, not to say that it had a lot to live up to. It did, but it doesn't deliver sort of on any level. And I just think it's unfortunate. They really needed to, you know, take what was good about season 1 and expand it as opposed to maybe exploring a different way of doing it. And that different way is just bad. So thumbs down.
Thumbs down for me, too. I really missed dead John Paul's turgid member in this season. I don't know if you remember, that was sort of an ongoing sight gag that his, you know, he had an erection in his own wake lying there in the middle of the living room.
But who hasn't?
But what made the first season magic, the way you're describing it, I will say, Kevin, it's almost like you've forgotten how dark season 1 was. Season 1 was fucking dark. There were some
but also funny.
Very funny, fun moments, but also
Tell me one joke from
deeply dark moments. There's a sexual assault. There's like domestic violence. There's like some really dark stuff in that season. And this season was even missing that. There was nothing that was nearly as dark as season 1, and there was nothing nearly as funny like dead John Paul's turgid member. So yeah, it didn't deliver. It didn't deliver on either end of the spectrum, and it didn't deliver in the middle of the spectrum either. And you know that I love things that are mid sometimes because they're eminently watchable. This wasn't. And every time you'd say, want to watch another episode of Bad Sisters, I wanted to be like, no. But I thought you wanted to watch it, so I feigned enthusiasm, but it was all feigned. No, big thumbs down for me for this season of Bad Sisters. All right, now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week. A woman in Concord, North Carolina is recovering after gluing her eye closed. The patient wears contact lenses and accidentally reached for the nail glue instead of her eye drops. The sticky stuff shut the lid good and tight. Doctors have been unable to get the glue out, saying she'll have to keep it shut for 5 to 7 more weeks. Not to victim blame, but when you keep your nail glue next to your eye drops, this is an accident that maybe you should have seen coming. So panel, my question. Yes. This is a sticky situation, panel. What other household mix-up should this woman try to avoid? Laura Bricker.
Chopping jalapenos before coitus.
Oh,
before coitus.
Holy cow, Laura.
Good God.
I don't want to know if that comes from personal experience or not. What about you, Toby?
It's oddly specific.
That happened to my college roommate.
Oh, okay.
She was dating some guy and like he was making the chili and then they got a little amorous and then the next thing you know, she was like, ah!
Wow.
That's hospital time.
What about you, Toby? What other household mix-up should this woman try to avoid?
I don't know. Don't brush your teeth with plumber's caulk. It's hard after the jalapenos to come up with anything.
What do you think, Kevin?
Don't confuse your shampoo with that bottle of Nair.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
the smell alone should wave you off, I think. All right, that's
I don't know
what
Nair smells like.
You would remember if you did.
Okay.
Laura Bricker, folks want to reach out to you and say, hey, I want to hear more about that jalapeno coitus thing. How can they find you on social media?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Blue Sky and Instagram.
What about you, Toby? If people want to share your philosophy about soft pants, how can they find you online?
At Toby Ball NH on Blue Sky and occasionally Twitter. Although that Twitter is just
wild.
It's nuts. It's like a completely different thing.
It's gotten so wild in the last couple weeks. Kevin Flynn, how can people find you?
I'm Kevin Flynn on Blue Sky and Kevin P. Flynn just about everywhere else.
If you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Blue Sky, and TikTok. We're Crime Writers On almost everywhere you go. I encourage you to join our incredible community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. I want to give a shout out for any of our listeners living in the fire zone in California. We are thinking about you. Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll also get the after show, Married with Podcast, Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, and Toby Ball's Book Club podcasts. Our theme song was composed and performed by Tyler Gibbons. Our line editor is the terrific Livy Burdett. The EP is Kevin. This show was recorded in Studio C, the closet in a New Hampshire basement where, to be honest, I also refer to my husband as a prick, and Kevin refers to me frequently as a wagon. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
She's a wagon, and it just made me want to look up, well, what does it mean to call somebody a wagon in Ireland? And it's an obnoxious, brash woman. Okay,
Yeah, I
fine.
looked that up too.
Yeah. Stop. Laura, we have
Yeah, you lost me, and I tried to, so I don't know if I'm on my mic.
You're on the wrong mic.
No.
Yeah, hang on.
Okay, I might have to leave and come back then, because it's not letting me
Go ahead,
switch.
leave and come back.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Kevin's going to finish your answer?
Yeah. And so she's a wagon, just like Laura Bricker is. No, obviously. I said that, guys, because she couldn't hear me say that. Okay.
Partners in Crime Media.